Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, CesarRespino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, CesarRespino, and today I have a special guest. She is hired by leaders to 2 or 5 times their business, brand, and legacy. She's won numerous design awards, co-founded an NYC marketing firm working with Fortune 100 to startups. Founded TEDxSarasota, is a certified success principles trainer. Has been featured in Business Insider, Yahoo Finance, and ABC. She's also a 2 times international best-selling author. Her global roster of CEOs and founders focuses on impactful innovation, leadership, and brand expansion. Her experience is decades deep, and her desire to ignite others through speaking and writing is an unwavering guidepost. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Judy Winslow. Hey, Judy, how are you?
Thank you so much, Cesar. So nice to be here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to have you here. So definitely to get started, tell me a little bit about your background. Where are you originally from and how was that upbringing for you?
Yeah, okay. So I'm from the Northeast in America, from New Jersey, outside of Philadelphia. I grew up in a seemingly very upper middle class experience. My dad was an attorney and my mom was a mom. She put my dad through law school and then became a mommy. And on the outside, it looked all nice and pretty. And at home, not so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bit of a toxic environment, which perhaps other people would have been able to navigate more effortlessly. But I did not know it at the time, but it turns out, now that I'm so much older, I can see that because I'm a highly sensitive person and empathic and intuitive, the energy in the house deeply affected me, but not in a good way. So there was a bit of a mismatch between how we looked to everyone else and really how dysfunctional we were at home. So that's how I grew up, and it was a bumpy ride, and it wasn't something that really became clear to me until much later.
Got you. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the things that you were dealing with? So what were some of those toxic traits or the environment? Because I do believe that even right now with social media, and just kind of relating that, right? A lot of times we see one thing on social media without realizing that behind the scenes, there could be many different things, whether it's a toxic situation or whether even more so, sometimes people tend to hide their true emotions and feelings, even to the point where I know people might be showing one face on social media or just to the world, right? And in reality, they're depressed, they're going through a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of different things that can be taking place, right? And so I believe that it is important to understand and get a clear picture of what are the real things and true things that are taking place behind the scenes. So tell me a little bit about what were some of the things happening.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought this up because yes, there was this toxicity, if you will, at home. My mom was just a very angry, bitter person and took it out a lot on, it turned out, me. I think that, I have a whole story about that. And I think it's true, but I don't know it's true. It's true. But basically, and then, when we think about the time that I grew up in, women had no rights. People kids don't realize, even my contemporaries don't realize how recent we got some of these rights. I mean, we were not allowed to wear pants to school. I remember standing in the snow.
Yeah.
I used to smuggle pants in my backpack. And I
Yeah.
remember standing in the snow and putting on my pants, under my
Yeah.
skirt so I could rip off my skirt because I wasn't going to wear a skirt. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there is a factor that I've always been a bit rebellious. And so that was woven into it. I think that, after World War II, we had this culture, and we still do, of followers, and leaders. And school was really about following. So the negative reinforcement that occurred in school for me was extremely difficult. Like when I was little, I had a hard time reading. Now I'm a voracious reader. But because I struggled with reading, I would be held back and then promoted and then held back and then promoted. So there were a lot of mixed messages, if that makes sense. And, it's so interesting that you even went here, because in the last few days, I've been speaking to a number of my friends who either lost children to suicide around those early teenage years or have really struggled with that. And I was a suicidal kid. More than anything, all I dreamt about day in and day out was how to get off this planet. And I couldn't figure it out because I didn't have the nerve to just do it myself. I wanted some divine occurrence to take me out. And when you lose a child, now, of course, I have a very different perspective. But when we're young and we don't see any end in sight, and it seems, I remember sitting in my mother's car. That's where I would hide, because who would look for me there? I would hide in my mother's car and turn on the music and just cry and cry and cry. And I just felt that if there was a God, or if there was any divinity, that they just thought this was all a cruel joke, that there was no humanity. And I kind of feel like our world is in a bit of that spot right now.
Yeah,
We have
for sure.
so many ways lost our humanity, from social networking, where we only expose this one facet of our lives, winning, 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 and, to the depths of what's happening globally with war. And why would we want to send our children out to die for some philosophy? It's just, there's so much craziness.
Yeah.
So I think all of that angst just really wore on my sensitive soul.
Yeah, I get you. And um, one of the things that is interesting, and you mentioned that, the fact that you were having this conversation with some families and how they lost their kids.
Yeah.
Even going through, again, we're going through so many different challenging times, and even coming out of the last couple of years too, with the whole COVID and all that stuff. I know that there was a lot of people that kind of one felt into that, and I believe, and maybe I'm mistaken, I said, talking to a lot of people that have had those suicidal thoughts, and they felt like they were unworthy of being here. And unfortunately, as we know, some people were successful, as that is sad to see them, because there should be more help and more things that we can do for humans overall. Nevertheless, part of that is when people fall into that of depression or loneliness, or I'm not worthy of this. A lot of times comes from the lack of love, or the lack of support, or a system, right? Or a unity, right? A community. And so, having that said, did you feel like that was also part of your experience, lacking that stuff? And then obviously when we realize that and we go through that, it's like, okay, how can we change that around, right? Because a lot of times when people look at, well, I don't have that support or the love or the community, sometimes, again, suicidal thoughts, and also less turning to drugs, or less turning to gangs, or less turning to, bad habits, right? So tell me
Right.
more on that.
I think it's interesting that you asked that, because my parents loved me so much. If anything, I think they loved me too much.
Yeah.
So they were extremely controlling. They had extremely high expectations. The messaging was very mixed. So on the one hand, I was brilliant, but on the other hand, I was a failure. And I just found it very challenging to process. It wasn't anything about drugs. It was all emotional abuse and verbal, which they had no awareness of. because they grew up in a time where that was the norm.
Mm.
So I think that there's a number of things that contributed. So part of that was the psychology that was extremely confusing for me at home and at school.
Yeah.
And there was also, I had no community. I didn't really have any friends. I'm an introvert and was very shy as a child. So I did not know how to get support, honestly. And I don't think I really knew what was going on. And
Mm.
then the last piece is, well, there's two actually. One is now I think that perhaps I had some food allergies. I think my chemistry was off. And so I have a lot of sort of hypotheses that I firmly believe in. And one is that I think that, first of all, we know it's really hard to be a teen. I
Mhm.
think that we undervalue and under address the chemistry that's involved. So we're coming into puberty, where we have all these new hormones. We have, who knows? I think that I had a problem with milk, perhaps, or
Mhm.
bread. I don't know. I think because I had headaches a lot. So there were all sorts of things that were extraneous to this, but the end result was that I was in a very dark place and I did not have the tools to get out.
Mm.
And was never, because in those times, I remember when I was a kid, they used to send me to camp. I hated camp. I didn't fit in there. I didn't fit in at home. So that whole like outsider thing was an issue. Now I'm so grateful I never figured out how to fit in. I'm
Yeah.
so grateful. But when you're a kid, it's so painful.
Yeah.
I didn't look like anyone else. I didn't dress like the other kids. My mom bought me clothes that were too big because we didn't have money. So I should grow into them. So all the girls that were cute, their clothes fit them. Like that
Mhm.
kind of thing can just rip you up.
Yeah.
So we don't realize the impact that we're having on our children. And then, our system is just set up poorly. And to your point of all these people who are checking out, I am on such a bandwagon about that because I believe that many of the kids that we're losing are brilliant, are sensitive, are the way showers, but they are being so distressed in their day-to-day life and they're so sensitive that they literally cannot take it. And
Mhm.
these are kids that we need. I think some of these kids are the leaders,
Mhm.
but they don't know how to express, and so they're taking themselves out. We need
Yeah.
these kids.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that we're talking about this because we just brought up more things to it, and I can only imagine what teens or kids are going through nowadays compared to what you and I went to when we were in school, right? And the only reason why I'm saying that is because again, um, the idea, the sensitivity, and also the idea that back in the day there was not social media, right? There was none of that stuff, and right now there's so much pressure. Now that I think about it, there's so much pressure on the kids now with social media. How many likes am I getting? How many people are watching my stuff? How many hearts am I getting? So people are really driving that in the popularity, right? Obviously back before it was like who's popular at school, and it was just at that school, right? There was nothing else outside of that except here. Now it's like, are you popular on social media and who's watching you? And I can only imagine what that could be doing to kids. And so I do believe that we have to, as parents or adults, we have to be more mindful of that because again, going back to what you were also talking about is from some of these people again could be the leaders of our future, right? And so as opposed to creating followers, which we are creating many of them, just following a system that perhaps is broken, I do believe is broken in many different ways, we have to start creating leaders that can actually start leading in different aspects, for sure.
Dang it. Yeah. Yeah, so when you think about, and recently I had one of my people, I also work with some younger people. I was
Mhm.
involved for a long time with the MBA program in Tampa, coaching their MBA marketing kids who are looking for a school, what to do after school and how to approach their career. And it's so interesting because, and then I've been speaking recently with some younger kids. And one of the kids that I spoke with recently was, just in a really distressed state, being bullied. And we've just, in the last few years, we've allowed some behaviors that have been previously deemed as inappropriate shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
And we are allowing this hatred to bubble up, and we are allowing, oh gosh, there's just so many things that in my mind are unacceptable behavior that we are allowing, and it's blossoming and flowering into something, but it's a terrible weed, and it's an insidious weed, and it's overtaking some good. And I think that one of the gifts of that childhood that I did have is that it reinforced in me how important it is to be kind, how important it is to be kind to others, but also to myself, which has taken me decades to
Yeah.
learn and learn well. And I'm still in the study of it, right?
Yeah.
So, these are, we didn't have the awareness back then to understand what was happening in our neural pathways that would then set the premise for a lifetime of distress, for a lifetime of despair, for those that went down those roads that led to addiction or whatever. And I was lucky enough not to be that kid. I just sort of was sitting at home alone in a corner freaking out.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me how, obviously you mentioned you had, the idea of those thoughts. How were you able to step outside of that and ease into, this new lifestyle? And I call new lifestyle because obviously you're going from having those suicidal thoughts where I don't want to be here anymore to now, transferring or into a different state of mind, right? And so what were the things you did to help you with that?
Well, I was that kid. I was that person for decades. So I think it started when I was around 10 or 11. And again, that's partly why I think it's chemical. But then I was also having things in school. Like I was really interested in art, and the art teacher told me, "Oh, you'll never be able to."
Yeah.
Well, I grew up to be a graphic designer. Like, how did that
Nice.
happen?
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's crazy how things turn out. But I basically ended up, I had some friends that were taking these personal development classes, and they kept saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. And I kept saying, I love you to pieces, but you're the same jerk you were 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. Like, I don't get it. And eventually it finally happened that I moved to New York City. And the night I moved to New York City, I went to a party with my best friend. And I knew we were going to a party with all of those kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I met this man, and we ended up talking for hours. And I don't know, if I had been married to him, I would have been really mad because his wife, I don't even know where she was, but we ended up hanging out the whole evening. And the way that he was speaking to me as the stranger, somehow it got through to me. He kept saying, like, I can see how powerful you are, and I can see how articulate you are. And he wasn't coming on to me. It was like not that kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
It was fascinating. I just kept thinking, and the next day he called me a couple days later, and he said, what are you doing February 7th?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a terrible liar. And I was like, dude, I just moved here. Like, come on, that's not fair. I got nothing. He said, well, I want you to come to this thing at my house. And I didn't know how to say no. So I said yes. And I went to the thing at his house, and he had this guest there, and there were probably 12 people there. And they said, we'd like to introduce you to this thing, and we want you to come. And, what would you want to get out of it? So I'm kind of a smart ass. And I said, well, I would like to be taller and thinner. Am I going to get that? And the guy said, well, probably not. Is there anything else that you would desire? I'm like, not really. I'm good. Yeah. So I was sort of aggravated with the whole thing. And then I went home, and it wasn't all that expensive, but it was too expensive for me. And my ex-husband had sold our house in Colorado. I had just moved to New York. And my in-laws called and said, listen, we feel terrible that this whole thing went down. We think you're fabulous. We want you to have the money from the house. And it was just so cosmic. So it just seemed like I was getting that money so I could go to the course, even though I was still resisting it. And so I went. And I tell people that it changed my life in a weekend. But it wasn't really a weekend, right? What it did was it changed my focus, and it changed my awareness of what's possible. And what I realized, and I tell these stories all the time about it, but what I realized was that I had become habitually depressed. That every day we get to choose, and that I had basically worn a neural pathway in my brain that said, today is going to suck.
Mm, mm,
And then I made today not be good.
yeah.
And once I started to shift that, which I have been on that journey for over 30 years now, I was in my 20s when that went down. It's really been life altering. It changed the entire trajectory of my life. It's had me be this stand for leadership that I am now. It has had me lean into everything I could get a hold of still today around positive psychology, about how we are wired and how we can control our wiring and how we can be something else, we can do something else, and we can show up in the world the way we are really intended to, which to me is powerfully,
Hmm.
which is from a place of innovation and influence and impact. And that is what I work with my people around
Yeah.
in the business sphere.
No,
Mm-hmm.
I love that, and I love the fact that you said that weekend. Although, as you alluded, it wasn't that weekend. I said that's what changed your trajectory. And I always go back to this idea, and I believe, and I know it now more so now than before, is that the choices and the decisions that we make today will determine and impact the quality of life that we have tomorrow. And so once we make a choice, like that's the biggest thing, is like making that choice, like taking that action to make that decision. Not making a decision is making a decision of not making a decision, right? And a lot of times we don't think of that. And so when you take that decision and you say, well, you know what, maybe it's not working out the way I wanted it to work out, or whatever that might be, then you have also the power to pivot immediately and make any decision, right? And so again, a lot of times we forget about that, and because we are so afraid, or whatever the case may be, or we don't trust something, we tend not to make those decisions, and we're sitting on limbo, procrastinating of taking some actions. And so again, I do believe that that's huge when you do that. And as you alluded, 30 years later, you're still in this journey, because I do believe that when you're in this journey, is a you're in school forever, right? You're always learning. I tell people, if the minute you stop learning, you're gonna start dying, because you kind of lose that sense of purpose, or gratification that you're looking for, right? In my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about it is, I don't know if I actually made a decision in that moment, but I definitely became aware. So the story that I tell is, at the end of this class that I was in, they said, if you didn't get it, stand up, because we want to make sure that you got what you came for. And so I stood up, because I was like, well, I think I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were like 350 people in the room. Thankfully, they started on the other side of the room, and they started with somebody, and they said, so what's up? And they started to talk, and I was like, oh yeah, that made sense to me. So I sat down, and then somebody else started speaking. So I stood up. And at this point, I had made a bunch of friends, and they're tugging on my shirt, like, sit down. What is wrong with you? Sit down. I said, no, I want to puzzle this out. And I did that like 5 or 6 times. I kept standing up and sitting down. I can't imagine anyone else was doing that, but I was such a nutcase. I'm like, I get it. No, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. And then I finally had this like, moment. And I sat down, like, boom. And I realized that's exactly like what was happening. Like, you can't stand up and sit down at the same time. You can't be happy and sad at the same time.
Correct.
You can't make a difference and hide in your room at the same time. Like, there's all these correlations, and it just was like, what?
Yeah.
The whole thing. And I realized, wow, like, I have to choose one. And right now I'm choosing to be depressed and sad, like my mother. And I was like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to like literally change my gaze. Like this morning, I told you earlier, I really, I don't know if it was dreams or what, but I woke up this morning and I burst into tears, because the world is so crazy and so upsetting. And we're sending these people off to kill each other. It's just
crazy.
And I had to like sit with it and think about, and there's a number of other factors about where I live. And I went online and I started pulling up songs, music that could help me. And one of the songs that came to mind was I'm a terrible singer, but remember the song War? What is it good for?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Say it again.
Yeah.
And so I've been just saying that in my head, like, we have to choose peace. We have to look for other answers instead of going down this literally age-old path. Think of that as a neural pathway. How's that working for you?
Yeah.
Not so good.
Right. No, definitely. And I love what you mentioned, and I have it here in my notes, is change your thoughts, change your life, right? And again, it comes down to that. Like, we have the ability to choose what we're thinking, and the emotions we're having. And the biggest challenge is that we cannot be sitting down on a emotion that is not serving us for way too long. Right. I think it's okay to feel the emotion, except don't stay in that for way too long. You got to be able to move forward, right? And move
Right.
out.
And that's what happened for me. So back in the old days when I was a kid, and I literally would be in that space for months and years. Now, as I shared with you earlier, just now, I can flip that switch so much faster. I can do it in hours. Sometimes it takes a day. Sometimes I need to sleep or eat or drink water.
Yep.
But I'm much better at self-diagnosing. And so that's part of, I think, what happens along the journey. So, and when you mention social media, right, that's all external. But as we grow, and when we're willing to look inside and sit with ourselves and own our choices and own who we are, like, one of the things I love about Jack Canfield's work, one of his big principles is E plus R equals O. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So if the formula is event plus response equals outcome. Now, there's many events that are happening to us all the time that we can't change. But what we can change is how we respond to them.
Right.
Whether they're happening now or they've happened in the past. It's called reframing, right? So the way that we respond to anything will dictate the outcome, which we can always shift. But we have to own, and that process, it begins within. We can't default on that. We can't defer to someone else. We can't give that away. We have to start inside ourselves. And so that's why I think this personal development work is so important, because our world is so busy and it moves so quickly. So it's very unlikely that you will be sitting with yourself, by yourself, thinking about yourself for days on end, unless you literally choose to get yourself in a room and do that, or get yourself with a coach and do that, or get yourself right. Like, that has to be a choice. And you have to be willing to be honest and open and curious. Curiosity is like, isn't anyone curious in the world right now why we're killing each other and continue to? Isn't anyone more curious? Can't we be more curious than killers?
Yeah, right. I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, for sure. So tell me about, obviously you help businesses and take their business 2 to 5 times more. Tell me about what are the things that you do, and you help businesses and the things you have going on, because you have a lot of things going on and you've done a lot of things for yourself, and that's amazing. So tell me more about that.
So yeah, my greatest joy right now is I call it brand leadership.
Okay.
So what do we know about brands? We know that, first of all, this wasn't even a word like 30 years ago. I was working in branding and people were like, isn't that for
What is that?
Coca-Cola? Like, what
Yeah.
is that? So the whole brand conversation is quite recent, but most people think it's a logo. A lot of people think it's a website, or they think it's what they're wearing, but it isn't. Your brand is really an expression of your internal essence. Whether you are a person or a business, it is how you express, how you show up in the world, how others perceive you, how you would like to be known. I mean, there's like a diamond, there's many facets to a brand. I'm super passionate about brand leadership. So there's a gap between just being a brand and being a brand leader. Leaders innovate. Leaders are willing to stand out. Leaders are willing to go against the grain. Leaders are willing to lead differently and be at the forefront of everything, right? They're the way showers. They're the future. So I love that space. And what I find is that many people will come to me because they want to increase their revenue. They want to scale their business. Is flat. They think they need a rebranding. They'd like to do a TEDx talk, which I believe is a part of your brand.
Mhm.
So they'll come to me for these different reasons. But what I find is that they're oftentimes the diagnostic will show that where we need to strengthen their brand muscles, if you will, starts with leadership. And that when we can get some of these foundational pieces really in place, it's like building a house. You don't want to build a huge mansion on a tiny little foundation, right? We need a solid foundation. We need a great team. We need a solid story and purpose for being. We need to know where we're going and why. So there's all these elements, and that's where how I work. I work mostly with leaders. I work mostly with CEOs who are founders. So they've brought this company from nothing to, either $1 million or close to $1 million. And how they got here, they know will not take them to the next
Yeah.
mile marker. So that's where we play. And it's just an amazing, beautiful thing to be
That's
involved
huge.
in.
Do you believe, and I know this has been something that I've heard before, I want to get your opinion on this. Do you believe that leaders are made or they're born?
So I have also really strong opinions about this. So
Yeah.
I think that we are all leaders. I think that, again, you and I were talking earlier. So I
Yeah.
think that since World War II specifically, there has been this sort of movement to disarm humanity from their leadership sort of awareness. So I think that we're all leaders. And I don't care whether you're leading a business, a multi-zillion dollar business, or you're taking your child by the hand and leading them across the street, or you're a little kid leading your stuffed bunnies in a chorus of, Mickey Mouse. I don't care. You are a leader. The difference is it's just like a plant. Are we going to fertilize, water, and appreciate and help grow these little creatures into their leadership potential? Or are we going to spend their early years, that 1 through right to like 5, 7, making them less, telling them what they're doing wrong? We're not leaning into this possibility. So I guess the short answer is I think we all have the potential and are leaders. Some of us just don't go down that path, and some of us are not empowered until later in life, and some of us are just annoying little gnats, and that's who we'll always be.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
always be leaders, and we're going to just show up like that no matter what.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, no, and I definitely agree with you. I 100% agree with you on that too, and I have the same point of view. I do believe that we are all leaders, and at the same time, there's so many external factors, and as you mentioned, what am I feeding this person, or this human being, and am I giving them the right tools? Are they in the right environment? The different elements that come with that, and there's so many different things with that, and I also believe that, unfortunately, I think we were kind of talking about that is, we're in a place right now in a society where instead of creating leaders, we're just creating followers, and it's all our social media probably are not only in the US. I actually see it in different countries too.
Yeah.
Just the government in general is like that's what they're creating. They're not. I don't think they're edifying enough the people or providing the right tools to be able to have that potential, right? To be able to have a better world and a better place and all those different things. So definitely, yeah.
And there's another thing about it, Cesar, and that I find this to be very distressing, that we've gotten away from leadership being about empowering. We've gotten away from leadership being about bringing out the best in others. And so much of what we consider leadership now is about greed. It's about divisiveness. It's about men, icky old white guys staying in control. It's all fear-based. When you think about it, it's all fear-based. So what if we were raising up humanity to be leaders in love, to be leaders in peace, to be leaders in abundance, it's a completely different mindset. So I think we have like this amazing opportunity, and I think that people like us need to focus on it so that we don't squander it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we are at a point, I think we're at a bit of a tipping point in society.
I agree.
And we need to rally those that believe in love, those that believe in lifting others, those that believe in lighting the way. We have to stand up.
Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree. If people wanted to connect with you, find out more about, your services, or even get on TEDx or any of that stuff, how can they contact you and find you?
Yeah. So probably the easiest is either on Facebook or LinkedIn are kind of my big platforms that I play on. I'm on Instagram. I stay off of Twitter or whatever we're calling it these days.
X. Yeah.
But yeah, and then my business is called unforgettableBrands.com. So I'm there. But yeah, I welcome outreach and I love to interact with everyone. So, and I'm because I'm an introvert, I'm not so great at reaching out, but I love to be involved and play and always looking for more opportunities to unite humanity. That's what we're here to do.
I love that. I love that. And obviously, you have done so much for yourself, and I'm sure you have a couple of secrets, or if you want to call them secrets, or a couple of habits, things you do on a day-to-day basis to kind of get you going. And do you have any of that stuff? And if you do, can you share some of the things that you do daily or you used to do to kind of get you up and going?
They're really mundane, actually. So I need to be outside. I'm someone who really gets just so much appreciation for nature and the universe when I'm outside. So I like to be outside and sort of be in gratitude is a really big thing for me. I'm very into positive psychology, as I mentioned. So if you haven't, read the book Flourish by Dr. Marty Seligman. So I do a lot of reading, and I am in communities that help me sort of stay up and see the light, because I can go down that yucky rabbit hole too. And really, it's goofy things like drinking enough water and making sure you sleep and laugh. And laughter is such a big deal.
Yeah.
And, as adults, we don't laugh enough. We take ourselves and the world so seriously, and I do too. Yeah. So laughing is really important. But just lighten up. I'm grateful. I live near the beach. And when things get really bad for me, I get on my bike and I ride the beach, and I just thank the universe and whatever divinity was smart enough to bring me here, because I never heard of this place. So I don't know how the heck I got here, but I thank my angels every day.
Yeah, I love that. And the fact that you just mentioned that gratitude, and I think we need to do more of that. And a couple of years back, I was doing a gratitude challenge, and going live on Facebook, and whatever it is that you do, like I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing is you want to be able to do something that can really help you get those emotions and get you in a different state of mind, right? A lot of times when we're going through some difficult times, and I also like to go out for walks. I walk every day, twice a day. I like to go out and just clear my mind, and it's good for me to be able to do that.
Yeah, me too. And I listen to podcasts, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do that too. Definitely do that too. And it's funny you mentioned about funny is great, because it's not only great for us for the soul. I have one of my mentors. He said, funny means money, right? And so when you look at it from that perspective, because when you're laughing and people want to do like, hey, I want more of that. What do you have? Like, I want to learn where did I get that medicine, right? So yeah, I think it's huge. It's great. So I definitely love that. My last question for you is, and you already given us a lot of great tips, and so see if I can get one more out of you. For the people that are listening to us and are watching us, if they're going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one thing you can say to them so they can start overcoming that challenge?
I've been asked this a lot lately, and I feel like this is so inadequate, but one of the things that I couldn't get my arms around when I was younger is that this too shall pass. Like, there really is you will get to the other side, and the other side, it's like when you have a friend going through divorce. I remember this is so embarrassing, my first divorce. And I just wanted to die. That was my answer for everything.
Yeah.
Check, please. I'd like to go now.
I'm ready to check out. Yeah.
Right. And I'm so grateful that, on the other side is like, damn, I have an amazing life. And when I got divorced the second time, I thought I was such a failure, but now I see I wasn't a failure. It didn't work.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it.
Right.
That's what if, a failure is really, they say, first, what is it? First attempt in learning. Okay, so it was my second attempt in learning. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right. So, failure is just, it's a way to learn. And that, there's so many things that we don't teach our kids. Like we don't, why are we're giving kids trophies for getting through kindergarten? How about if we give them a trophy for falling over their own feet, for
Hmm.
tripping up, for trying and not getting there?
Hmm.
But it's like we're not all winning all the time.
Yeah.
There's so many lies that have been woven into our culture that are so in disservice of ourselves.
Yeah.
So for anyone that is in darkness, first of all, please reach out to
Yeah.
someone, if not me. I don't know what I would do about it, but I'm here.
Yeah.
And just, please know that you are loved. You are loved by someone. If nothing else, please try to love yourself.
Mm. Yeah.
Try to love yourself and get some help, get some support. There's someone, maybe it's a counselor at school, maybe it's you're a parent. It's hard to listen to parent. My mom, because the messages are so mixed. On one hand, you're so fabulous, you're the God's gift to the universe, and on the other hand, why didn't you get an A on this test?
Hmm. Yeah.
Whatever. I'm not a
Yeah.
great test taker. That's why.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
so get help, find a way, and just know it will end. The good is coming. You are earning the best life, the greatest, most beautiful ride, and it's all going to be shining on you.
Boom. I love that. Thank you so much for that. I definitely love that. And this too shall pass. I definitely enjoy that. So thank you again for all your words of wisdom and for spending time here with me. I really appreciate you. And so, Judy, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me, Caesar.
Yeah, definitely. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please make sure that you share this message because definitely somebody needs to hear this message. And I will see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Thank you.
Hi, I'm CesarRespino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.